I'm just going to say some words, and I just want to see what comes up in you, okay? What kind of feelings, if it's an anxiety or if it's a relaxation, if it's a yes, yes, or a, oh, I never do that. So how about some words just to reflect for your own being, to just kind of see how you feel. Check in with yourself, okay? The word fun or deep, creative, play, experience. How do all those different types of words make you feel? Well, I believe that all of those different words, and if I would add God into the mix, all can be living in harmony together, and probably maybe should. Now, here's some other words. I want to curious again how you feel about these words or descriptors. Stuck, bored, exhausted, anxious, lost, hopeless. How do you react to those words? Are we reacting in a way, yes, that's exactly how I've been feeling, all that last set of words, or yes, that is, but gosh, no, I felt this word and then at the beginning and then this word here, because we know what a lot of our lives, right, are just this amalgamation of different experiences, up and down. Over the next couple weeks, we're going to explore these, what I think maybe you'll find is surprising parallels between creativity and the creative path. Now, this actual term, this word, the name of this series, Drawn In, did come from the worship design studio that we use, but it's been so wonderful for me to be able to take some of these ideas and then run with them. And so there's some books that I found on the back table there. If anyone wants to borrow these or you just want to kind of look through them and maybe get them from your library or Kindle or wherever, just so many parallels that we find between creativity and a spiritual life or a deepening spiritual life. So I hope that as we are continuing to go through this, that we eventually, looking at week 6, right, are going to find kind of our sweet spot, if you will, or our sacred calling a bit more fully. And I am really going to talk about that as well, that it's not just a pastor who is ordained and has taken that step, but that we each have a calling. And I'm going to give examples about that through the next 6 weeks. And from my life or from people that I know that have responded to a call, not in any way are they full-time ministry, because that call has been full-time maybe, but in their job where they are currently working, and it's not a ministry field you wouldn't normally think. But yet again, we know we all can and live in a mission field or a ministry field in our world today. So there's, I think, a crucial need for creativity. And we have that history, I think, has proven over and over that when the Holy Spirit is at work in people, things happen. So if you think that God is idly sitting by the sidelines, watching all the challenges that we face and not doing anything to help us out, I really, truly think that you need to think again. Sometimes it can feel that way. I understand that. I've been there too. But God is actively participating in this world. And again, he uses us. He uses us throughout history. We see that over and over. Imperfect people. He uses us to make things happen for good. So I hope that we will get an even better awareness of that as we work together. So I guess if I had to break the whole series down into one question, maybe it's this. Does God live within your dream, or do you live within God's dream? I don't normally repeat myself, but I'm going to, again, say this. Does God live within your dream, or do you live within God's dream? Now, some of you may initially go, oh, I don't dream anymore. That's just for kids. I used to dream, but life just turned out not the way I wanted it to, so I don't even bother dreaming. And that's, again, a valid thing. Who am I to argue with that? But at the same time, I will, because I need to remind us that the Spirit is always there and that we need to be able to trust God to dream, maybe just even a little bit as we continue, and then maybe a little bit more, and then maybe a little bit more. Or maybe you're on the opposite spectrum and you're like, oh my gosh, yes, like whenever I have like a vision or a dream of something, I give it to God and poof, the whole thing blows up in a wonderful way. Not blows up as like terrible, but it just exponentially God blesses it and off we go. What are your dreams? What are your dreams for your life? What are your dreams for this church? What are your dreams for the world? If God's role in your life is merely to live within your dream, though, then God must live within the limits of your intelligence and imagination. Does that make sense? You define the playing field, and God must play then by your rules. Stay within your boundaries and your time frame and play on your side. That doesn't sound like it's going to probably go very far. But when you live within God's dream, let's just say the playing field becomes larger than you can imagine, and the game is different, and the blessings roll. In the creative process, as in the process of spiritual transformation, you dream God's dream, and then you hover around God's dream until your response to it comes out of your deepest loves and passions. And that's what we're working on these first couple weeks. What are your deepest passions? What are the things that really bring you alive? Because it's not being selfish to say, well, I really love this, but I don't know, God probably wants me to just, go work at the food pantry or do this or that. Trust me, there are people that's their greatest love, is to go work at the food pantry. So let them go work at the food pantry, and then you go do the other thing that brings you joy. Now, maybe we don't know what those things are, so we have to experiment. We have to keep things open, for sure. But I do believe that finding our greatest joy, what brings us the greatest joy, again, will compound itself, that joy will spring up, and then it will excite others, and then they will be impacted. So this series has a couple pieces to it. Number one is today, which we're starting to talk about dreaming. Next week, our word is hover. To take again God's dream as we believe that we understand it, and again, that takes discernment, it takes prayer, it takes listening. And we also need to look at our own lives. What brings us the greatest joy, and how can that be shared with others? After this, then we take on risk of acting on what we've discerned, and that's risky. And we're going to talk about that. That'll end up on the day of our annual meeting, when we look at our church and what have we done and where are we going. Once you've acted, then you listen, right? You listen. Now, we should listen now also, but we listen as we enter new territory and pay attention to new information that we receive from ourselves and from God. We reintegrate this listening. That will be our 5th week. And adjust course as necessary. And then finally, rest and celebrate what we have accomplished together. You and your life, we as a church, you and God, though, always, obviously, God with us. And then, hopefully, each time, then, we get inspired to dream again and again. But we need to be careful that we are not like the listeners in Luke. So here we are back at Luke, at our Luke reading, Luke 4. Jesus gives us this glimpse of the magnitude of God's playing field when he preaches for the first time in the synagogue in his hometown of Nazareth. So I don't know if you noticed or not there, Jesus returned in the power of the Spirit to Galilee, and he taught in their synagogues and was praised by everyone. So at first, everybody speaks well of him. They marvel that this is a kid from their own neighborhood speaking so eloquently in the synagogue. And they even say, "Isn't that Joseph's son?" They ask each other, amazed at his words. And they can barely restrain themselves from pinching his cheek. That's our little guy. We're so proud of him. But Jesus doesn't give them the kind of congratulatory sermon that they want. He doesn't assure them that God is on their side and their side only. And how many times do we see people, unfortunately, especially Christians, that have that mindset? And then they just don't understand or get angry or quit or just completely mangle the scriptures to make it come out, right? Proof texting, the way that they feel like it should come out then. They want, very often, we want God to be for us, right? And our side. And we take sides. And we know, again, that's not what God does. Instead, Jesus reminds them of an old story of the prophet Elijah, who ministered to Elijah's protege, Elisha, and then also cleansed Naaman, the Syrian, from leprosy. So there's these stories that everybody knows in the hearing audience. And again, these sound pretty nice to us now, right? Oh, he healed somebody who had leprosy. Well, that's really nice. Good job, Jesus. And that's wonderful. But the people of the time would have heard that and said, wait a minute, Naaman, he wasn't one of us. Why are you healing other people instead of focusing on us? Aren't we your chosen people? In Jesus' time, these stories would have had an edge. They were an example of God helping foreigners, for example. Jesus notes that even though there were plenty of starving widows in Israel in Elijah's day, the widow God called Elijah to save was an outsider, a foreigner. God was dreaming bigger than just one vision. God was dreaming for an entire race. And I'm not saying that by doing that he was being less to the Israelites, but they were expecting more and then got pretty irritated when they weren't the top dog. But instead, again, Jesus shows us through the scriptures that everyone is welcome. Everyone is invited. And so I think that's why the mood of Jesus' crowd swiftly goes from admiring to adversarial when he reminds them of these stories that they had known in the scriptures, and he kind of backs them up. He's not just playing lip service to God's dream for the world. Jesus is actually expecting them to expand their own vision and then do something about it. So the same people who were cooing over him moments before, if we continue to read, then pretty much, right, try to force him off a cliff. That's how threatened they feel about Jesus' message of releasing the captives and letting the oppressed go free for everyone. So that can be tough, right? God's vision is huge. God's vision, his dream is so much bigger than anything we can even begin to imagine. And thanks be to God, right? That it's not just you or I kind of coming up with these things, but it's God's vision, because that's how things continue. That's how things just blossom, is by us following God's vision. The way we live God's dream is not to take on every single thing, though, that God deems as important, because we can't, right? I mean, have we tried that? I mean, I think several of us have talked. I remember one time a couple of us just talking about that, of just, there's so many problems in the world, and then we start this, oh, well, then this needs help, and oh, I've got to do this. And it can weigh us down, right? We know that that's a thing. Compassion burnout, justice burnout. I mean, there's words for these things. So I encourage us, instead of continuing to just kind of go around and maybe just a little bit here and help, and again, I'm not saying that we shouldn't do some of that, but what if, I'm just throwing this out, what if we discern and get deeply in touch with ourselves of what stirs our soul, and then we devote our life's energies into doing that soul-stirring work? And then we think, well, but there's somebody else who maybe, oh gosh, I'm on this one committee and I really don't care for being on that committee anymore, but who's going to go on it? Well, we'll never know if you stay on it and you don't love it, right? We'll never know, because if you don't have joy in that service, guess what? There is somebody else out there. I don't know who they are. I don't know when they'll come forward. I don't know when they'll discern, oh, you know what? I think I would love to serve on that committee or love to take on this job at church. And I'm not saying everybody should I can hear Mark Garrett call me already. Why did you tell everybody to not be on a committee, right? But what I'm saying is, don't keep doing something if it's not bringing you joy, because there's someone else who it will bring joy to. And if you're not doing that unjoyful thing, then you are going to have joy then at the thing then you will have time to do the thing that really does bring you joy. When the human soul pays attention to what brings it joy, what is life-giving, that's when amazing things happen in our lives, in our churches, in our world. One way we can do that, again, is by remembering that we are servants, all of us. We all have a calling. I know it's not officially Martin Luther King Jr. weekend yet, but it just was too much of a tie-in, right? To think about what are your dreams, and when we think about Martin Luther King Jr. So I know I've talked about this before. Obviously, you all know this well. But August 28, 1963, at the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., Martin Luther's very, very famous and often quoted, rightfully so, speech, "I Have a Dream." Now, again, it's difficult because and I reread the whole speech this week, and I've just picked just a part to conclude today. But I thought, you know what? It's tough, right? This was before I was born. But yet there are still issues that we are still dealing with. But yet, I hope as we are just reading, and again, this is towards the end of his speech, that we still can see some of the ways that we have progressed as a country, as a nation, but that other ways that we need to pick up and continue that fight for justice, that peaceful resistance, the peaceful fight that Martin Luther King Jr. himself proposed. So let us, this is towards the end, let us not wallow in the valley of despair. And again, I on purpose picked that starting spot, because I think for many of us right now, the way the world is, that it is very disheartening of where is peace, where is justice, and so I want to share the rest of this, or just a bit more with you. And so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. And again, maybe today, yes, maybe it's the state of Mississippi, I don't know. But maybe it fill in the blank, right, of other places that you have seen. And again, for many of us as middle-class white Americans, we maybe cannot relate to injustice. But maybe we can. Maybe there have been other things that we have unfairly been treated. So any injustice, any place in the country, right, we can this beautiful language of brotherhood and sisterhood together. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racist, with a governor having his lips dripping with the words interposition and nullification, one day there, right in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers, and little brown girls, right, and little brown boys. I mean, all people. So I conclude today with I hope inspiration for you, but not explicit instructions. Because I'm not sure, how am I to be able to conclude where it is that God is going to be having things bubble up within you? Is your dream something that God wants us to pursue? That God wants you to pursue? So we need to start with what are my dreams? What are my dreams for my life, for my kids, for my country, for my community, for God's world? What are my dreams? And then how do those dreams work in with God, right? And then we step back and say, God, what are the parts? Here's what bubbles up inside of me, but it just can't be just what I want. It has to be with your blessing. And so, again, I hope that this will kind of get things just stirred up a little bit. So maybe for a week or two, you might end up having more questions than answers, and that, I think, is absolutely wonderful. So please come back, okay? Don't just go, oh yeah, I have no idea. Right, none of us do. Keep working on it. Keep praying about it. We have the power, and we have, I think, the responsibility to continue following God's dreams. Things set up in the scriptures, things set up by earlier pioneers such as Martin Luther King Jr. I want to conclude today with a video.